Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome friends once again to our NPTEL MOOC module on health economics. We are taking a little departure from the conventional understanding of health economics by including the section on behavioral economics. Again, within behavioral there are also disaggregation. We will discuss about which is called conventional one and which is non-conventional approaches. So, the target here as a base to the previous unit, we covered financing, especially in the previous unit we covered financing and insurance in healthcare. In this week of our course we will discuss about behavioral health economics. This lecture covers the introduction part and especially identifies the relevance of behavioral economics in comparison with the traditional economic theory. So, behavioral economics is not possible without indeed citing the context called nudge, but nudge we are actually by the name authored in 2008. So, mentioned that Homo economicus can think like Albert Einstein, store as such memory as IBM's Big Blue and exercise the willpower of Mahatma Gandhi. Hence, this has given a very different perspective. So, we thought to cite this and we are going to use this nudge theory in our discussion. Hence, behavioral economics tries to improve economic theory and policy by drawing mainly on psychological or behavioral insights on how real people as opposed to the idealistically rational agent think and behave. So, now one context is very important. In our economic decisions or in economic theory, the fundamental assumption is the persons to be the particular person to be rational. But in reality it is not the case in all times. The person might take decision in irrational structure as well. So, we are going to discuss what do you mean by rational and what do you mean by irrational assumptions. Generally, economic model assume that humans are rational and predictable, but we are unfortunately not as smart. We often take not so rational decisions. You can also refer to the work of illustration given by Pranjal Kulkarni, India Behavioral Economics Network. So, those designs etc. are actually taken from this. We are hence citing for you can refer this speech and clarify further. Now, regarding some nudges or some behavioral perspective, we are just citing some illustrations here. Emphasizing scarcity often leads us to fall prey to marketing tactics. You might have seen that in online stock sometimes often the case they write that stock is finishing shortly, you reserve your booking. Okay, so don't miss out and last day or limited time offer etc. they used to give. Similarly, they also indirectly market with the word called very rare, you must buy, these are the common words. And similarly, they use a direct approach like called special offer, year end limited entry and only 10 spots are left etc. I usually mention. Another way of looking at the marketing or the behavioral perspectives, like persons are discussing here is, I think I will buy this outfit, and somebody else is actually somewhere giving you the direction that while buying you will be looking very good. Okay, so it tempts for the persons to go for purchase. Similarly, in different food chains, you will find number of directions, okay, for marketing. Like it is written as, treat your parents for no reason today. Okay, so I mean, you will also sometimes we follow the marketing tactics of which is behavioral in nature, like destination wedding etc. Look at, like here the word we written, we are actually following the illustration of Pranjal. Look at all these celebrities weddings in Rajasthan. Hence we the another couple might think of extending and go for the wedding of such variety. Another one, maybe we should have our wedding there too. That is why it's indirectly tempting. Okay, sometimes some incentives are given, like if you walk faster, I can skip the rush hour and find a seat in the metro. You might have seen the problem in Delhi and even in Mumbai, all such metro cities. So there are rush hours. If you relatively walk faster, your task might be completed and you will get a seat in the metro. Hence, that works as a simple nudge how you can go for effectiveness of your work. Given all such background understanding of some behavioral incentives or nudges, we are happy to introduce you the chapter or the unit called Introduction to Behavioral Economics. So the model of economic behavior we have considered in this course is restrictive in a number of ways. It assumes rational economic agents. Agents can comprehend risk and uncertainty perfectly. Then agents are assumed to self interested. However, in real life situation, an agent may deviate from this rationality and may take irrational decisions. Hence, the branch of behavioral economics is important, where decisions are still taken out of the irrational behavior. Branch of economics that incorporates insights from human psychology into models of economic behavior is called behavioral economics. And this is used to help us understand why our models may not make predictions we think they should in some cases. Let us compare these two, the traditional economics and the behavioral economics, by concept, by who are the people, and by market, by world, by policy tools. Starting with the concept, it's a traditional one is based on classical and neoclassical thoughts, whereas the behavioral one is based on psychology or interdisciplinary concepts. Coming to the people and their choice, in the traditional one it is rational, I think we have emphasized already, whereas in another case not always rational. There are systematic deviation from the rationality. So, we will be discussing this bounded rationality, heuristic, biases and prospect theory in our lectures. Hence, when in the traditional case, when we say they are rational, so rational agent theory etc., rational agent theory, homo economicus, expected utility theory are part of the discussion. So, we will start with the expected utility theory and then we will extend it till the not rational context like bounded rationality or heuristic or biases etc., even including prospect theory. Market so far is concerned in both the case. In the traditional economics context, market is considered to be efficient. Hence, efficient market hypothesis is studied. And another feature is that there is no free lunch. Okay. Whereas, in the case of behavioral economics, empirical evidence on overreaction, underreaction, market bubbles etc., are part of it. Hence, there are possibility of market crisis. and some concept called crowd psychology, collective behavior are part of the discussion of the market. And in traditional one, it is possible to calculate, or it is called calculable, whereas in behavioral economics it is fairly complex. So, in terms of policy tools, this is the traditional one is typically legislative enforcement, whereas in case of behavioral one, it is based on the nudge or the intervention or the libertarian paternalism or choice architecture, etc. Okay, so you can understand through an example, like suppose you work for the National Center for Disease Control, NCDC, and its job to keep people in India safe from diseases. There is a sudden flu like disease that breaks out in Delhi. Your best estimate is that 600 elites will die from the disease if no government action is taken. Your research team gave you 2 program choices to counter this outbreak. You must choose among the 2 choices in each program. There are 2 possible responses to the crisis of each program, and each cost the same amount, but can only choose one due to resource constraints. So, hence we are just mentioning the 2 programs for your understanding. For the first program, response A will save 200 people, and response B is actually risky. It has a 1/3 chance to save all 600 people, but a 2/3 chance to save no one. Okay, so 1/3 where you can save 600 people. So, as per the program 1, if that is the composition, which do you choose out of A and B? Then we will check for the program 2. So, starting with program A, it is for sure that the program will save 200 people. But another approach is that another response we just taken it, which say it is containing some risk. So, we will be including this risk aspect in our calculation. Similarly, in another program, response C mentions that 400 people will die for certain, and in response D there is 1/3 chance that no one will die and 2/3 chance that everyone will die. So, then obviously from these 2 programs we will try to find out which one is indeed chosen. Okay. So, the framing was different in 2 programs, but the content for each choice in a program is the same. We will just clarify. Most people in the program 1 and in program 1 particularly choose A because hardly there is any risk. Okay. And whereas in the other case, C case, 400 people will die for sure. It is just against the approach we have seen. It is related to saving, it is related to dying. Hence, the choice actually, the person's choice will be just reverse when we are taking the another side of the case. So, in the response D, that at least 1/3 chance that no one will die, and a 2/3 chance that everyone will die. So, at least there is a probability context to save some life. Hence, response D is most chosen. By manipulating how alternatives were framed, researchers could alter choices dramatically. Okay, so, the framing was different in 2 programs, but the content for each choice in a program is the same. Now, we are explaining the development of behavioral economics over time and in different contexts. So, as I already mentioned, it is interdisciplinary one. It has an intersection of economics, psychology, sociology, and neurobiology. So, the internal intersections we have just highlighted here: economics with psychology, and psychology with sociology, and sociology neurobiology. And so, starting from its scientific basis, counting by their year. The first stage is referred to the period 1960 to 1970. Different Carney schools the concept of limited rationality or the behavioral theory of form was noted. So, Carney schools are actually referred to this context initially, then later on for the period 70 till 90, which is related to Kamen, Tversky and Thaler, and it is largely interdisciplinary research. The emergence already received the Nobel Prize. The emergence of economic experiment, behavioral finance, the flowering of cognitive psychology, etc. In the later part, in the stage third, the work mostly referred to Lipson and Jack. The emergence of neuroeconomics, popularization of a new way of cognition. It is again a very deeper conception of behavioral science. There are its scientific basis referring to its Friedman economic theory and also expected utility theory, and then its origin of cognitive psychology, etc. And in between, due to the technological changes, there have been some change in the design or the structure of behavioral economics. So, accordingly, there are different papers and when findings, however, the work is still very limited. Now, the socio-economic foundations are very relevant. The emergence of the mainstream economy and then the improving the welfare of the population is accompanied with some possibly rational choices. The growing role of state in the economy and the growing demand of society for new theories, etc. We have referred the article for your better understanding. Now, as I already said, it is based on rationality. However, we need to just specify the difference between these two, homo economic and the humans. So, rationality rationality, self-control, selfishness, stability of preference, etc. so far as the homo economic is concerned. But the humans may go for predicted irrationality and limited cognitive skills, emotions, social norms, morals, etc. Then also limited selfishness and variability of preferences as well. So, we will be just discussing all sort of things. Behavioral economics is concerned with systematic departures from rational choice. Okay. Behavioral economics attempt to identify systematic biases, and it departs from rational choice, and the departure from rational choice can inform the development of more general descriptive models of economic behavior. Models can be used to develop testable hypotheses and predict economic behavior. Some systematic departures from rational choices are presented here as generosity and selfishness, paying attention to sunk cost, overconfidence, self-control problems, hyperbolic discounting, and another bias. I mean, these are all important biases noted in the context of rational choices. Some systematic departures from the rational choices in terms of biases, like framing effect, and we will also give each of their examples for clarifications. Starting with the bias number 1 called generosity and selfishness. The economic model of rational choice assumes rational self-interest, where people often engage in the act of generosity and exhibit altruism. These acts motivated primarily by a concern of the welfare of the others, such as donation to charity are the most obvious example, and economists have tried to include these in the model, for example by addition of someone else's consumption into your utility function, and parents' utility depends on child's consumption. So, that is where we address some sort of selfishness or the generosity, etc., which the camouflage the market in a different form, or the utility patterns are different. Another one we have already mentioned, another bias is called paying attention to sunk cost. Sunk cost, as we all know, that it is considered to be a lumpy cost at the entry, which are usually not recovered, as per the definition. However, when sunk cost is already incurred, it tempts but the person or the organization to indeed be attached, even if there are some you know disturbances in the model. Like the sunk cost fallacy describes our tendency to follow through on an endeavor if we have already invested time, effort or money into it, whether or not the current cost outweigh the benefits. Even if the current cost outweigh the benefit, because the sunk cost has already been incurred, still we have the bias of the sunk cost to continue and go for the production or consumption. The sunk cost fallacy is associated with this cost, the sunk cost fallacy is associated with commitment bias. Commitment bias means once you are committed to any step or any promise or any work, even if there are some non-paying events or the events are costlier, but still since because of the commitment we are supposed to go for it. The sunk cost fallacy is associated with commitment bias, where we continue to support our past decisions despite new evidence suggesting that it is not the best course of action. Okay. So, for an example, imagine that you bought a concert ticket a few weeks ago for $50. Weeks ago, on the day of the concert, you feel sick and it's raining outside. The traffic will be worse because of the rain, and that you risk getting sicker by going to the concert. Although it seems that the current drawbacks outweigh the benefits, why are you still likely to choose to go to the concert? Still we are going because of we have already purchased a bigger ticket, and it is still influencing our decisions. So similarly, sometimes we watch different, we already purchased different the combo package or the entire package for that serial, but in between we find that yes, serial is not that interesting. However, we always attempt to still check if anything is going to be better, and we will try to complete that that series. So these are some of the examples. Another is called overconfidence bias, bias related to overconfidence. When individual believes that skill level and judgment are better than they truly are, or they expect that outcomes are better for them and are more likely to happen than they truly are, such as gym charges etc. are taken monthly basis instead of single day basis, with the belief that or overconfident that or the over optimistic goals are made to be utilized. But some there are some events where people feel not to go, and so may not continue every time. So because of the overconfidence of taking off the task, the person purchases the entire package. Hence the gym takes the advantage of this optimism by offering monthly membership, allowing them to make more money from clients who may not visit as often they initially plan. So the planning fallacy is part of the explanation, and indeed the planning fallacy is another example of overconfidence, where people underestimate the length of time it will take them to complete a task, and often ignoring past experience. That is also part of a different behavior. So another bias is called self control problems and hyperbolic discounting. Okay. It used to be the case that the person takes the decision based on average or over in reality there are different course of action and different period of time. So when the people takes the decision based on now, people have a strong preference for now as against to the future events. A 10% discount rate implies that $1 today is equivalent to 0.9 next year. So there is evidence that many people have a higher discount rate when making decisions about immediate consumptions. So, the bias is that I mean there are different discounting rate, but the discounting rate are not really encased or not really counted in the mind of people, hence different decisions are taken. So, and that's basically called hyperbolic discounting, that is clarified as tendency of people to place much greater importance on the immediate present than even the near future when making economic decisions. So, that means the future decisions should actually consider the time discounting rate. Coming to the bias of this, one problem occurs that is related to the decision is called decision stop being time consistent. Consistencies in a consumer's economic preference in a given economic transaction, whether the economic transaction is far off or imminent. When consumers are not time consistent, they will specify their preferred exercise and diet routine for next week now. But then when they get to next week, they won't want to stick with the plan they set up. So, now we are clarifying behavioral economics for health and healthcare, how in the healthcare context these are specified. In healthcare, people find it hard to understand important information when making decisions. Making a wrong decision can have a bigger problem, and sometimes people choose things that aren't best for their health in the long run. Some of the applications of behavioral economics in health are mentioned here, such as organ donation, health insurance take up, simplification of choice, reduction in tobacco use, obesity, etc. You can go through the examples. So, especially in organ donation, I am just giving you the summary. Some countries have their own policy related to organ donations. One might be of opt-out system or opt-in system. In Indian context, used to be opt-in system, where people are given the choice to register for their organs to be donated after death. Even other countries like Denmark, Germany and US also followed the opt-in system. Like another one is the mandatory registration, and one has to in his life, when the person is live and is supposed to fill up a form declaration that organs to be donated. That is, if any there, then at any time they can write for their opting out policy or opting out action. They can write down that I am going to opt out this. So, such countries, some countries following this like Austria, Sweden, France and Russia. The significance of behavioral nudges is substantial, as they can assist individuals in recognizing their genuine preference for organ donation without biases. The opt-out system have high enrollment for organ donation than the opt-in systems. Some of the reports we have just mentioned here, that according to 2003 report, the willingness to donate organs ranges from a peak of 80 to 100% in Austria and Sweden to a minimum of 4 to 20% in countries such as Denmark and Germany. Okay. So, enrollment in government sponsored health insurance program, another one we already mentioned, and another is called simplification of prescription drug insurance plan choice. I think I need to sometimes you will find in government sponsored health insurance program, as mentioned in Baker et al. They found the reasons for improving take-up rates, such as problems in understanding the cost and benefits of alternatives, the sheer amount of choice bias toward the present over the future, and misunderstanding of the degree of risk, etc. In case of simplification of prescription drug insurance plan choice, people do not appear to be making good choices, to present only relevant information available, to limit the number of choices available and selective contracting, etc. Part of it, I think you please go through all these details, will be useful. Obesity, where traditional reasoning for obesity is that food prices has gone down so people have increased consumption. So, food prices used to be written in traditional format. However, researchers believe that obesity is not a rational choice. The reason obesity due to food companies attempt to change the taste of consumer through campaigning and advertisement. Okay. So, in the next slide we will take the understanding of nudge, how these are actually helping the students or the people to go for a healthy practice. Reduction in tobacco use, another one. Traditional economic method suggests that raising prices again or taxes and providing information about perils or regulations etc. will be curbing, whereas in case of behavioral economics context, this encourages people to sign contracts to quit smoking, providing rewards for their skipping the habits. This is what we will also discuss from the Simpsons work on nudge. This is where suggests that when you keep your healthy foods nearby to you, your chances of accessing it will be very high. So, healthy food we have kept it here, whereas the relatively unhealthy food like donuts etc. are actually kept from a distance. Hence, my cunning choice architecture will soon have home eating healthy. This is what is written. So, testing economic theories with data and approach is called experimental economics, or the branch is called experimental economics when we are testing with those theories, and we used to give some econometrics approach or the experimental approach. Okay, so some of them might be discussed in other sections. Okay, some of the coverages will make it. However, I am just presenting here what exactly are there in our structure. So far as behavioral economics is concerned, we start with the economic theory, then we address traditional economic theory where we will calculate or we clarify and calculate expected utility theory. However, the non-conventional economic theory is defined as or is explained as behavioral economic theory. We will be discussing in other lectures, especially in lecture number 3 on prospect theory, then inconsistency theory and nudge theory, and in the next lecture we will be discussing on expected utility theory. So, these are our readings which we have followed, and I think will be very useful for you to follow it correctly. I am sure this is going to be useful and you will raise your queries. Thank you.